Hello, everybody. Welcome back to part 5 in this series. In the fall, this coming fall, I will be teaching a Java class, and the final project is going to be a web application and a REST API built in Java. And we were using the Spring Boot starter files. That way, we can just focus on the Java portion in the project, the Java classes and the JSPs, and probably some enums and interfaces. Just the part for our project, and let Spring handle all of that background stuff so we don't have to spend all our class time doing that. And I was making videos that way they don't have to piece the knowledge back together from scattered tutorials around the internet or try to remember when we cover it in class, because there's going to be a lot covered in that class, obviously. Gets overwhelming at times. So just some reference material for the students. I thought I'd share it online. So this is part 5. And we got our app working and everything. Got it here tested in where we can test locally. And really, this last little video here is just about packaging at the end. Because way back in video 1, I said to build a jar file. And that jar file is necessary to test it locally here. So it's running with the embedded Tomcat server. So if we go to check it out, we can see what we did. Just a short API, a small API example, some local restaurants, the 3 I go to, one each week, or cycle through every week, go to a different restaurant, and a tip calculator, nothing too fancy here. And we also added in the actuator so that we could pull up some telemetry on it. So fairly straightforward project. All the parts came together smoothly. Hopefully the students are able to get their projects going with this and everything. The last thing though is, if we were to build this right now as it is, it's a jar file. So if we right click and go to build, it's going to build a jar file. And the API would work, but JSP pages will not work from the jar file. We need the WAR file instead of jar file. So we need to change that, and that'll go really quickly. So I did want to maybe add one thing to the project here. I'm going to add a link to the actuator. Whoops. I'll just make some small text and say, can also view project telemetry from Spring Boot actuator here. And if you're wondering why I put the closing tags on first, that's because of the predictive text. Just from years of experience, I found that the back button works a lot better without messing up the predictive text, because sometimes the right arrow will go into further menus on that. As I was reviewing the video, so we'll look at the current domain and then go to actuator. That way we don't have to go type that in every time. And that's just something I found over the years. If there's predictive text, the back button or left arrow is less likely to do something in that predictive text menu. Maybe highlight all that and put that in the other JSP pages. Because the actual last thing to show in this video is going to be really quick. Maybe I'll turn all the telemetry back on. I did limited it in the last video just to kind of show that we can limit it. So right now it's still set as a jar file. We can tell in NetBeans because it has the coffee cup here. It's planning on building a jar file. Should be able to test those couple changes. Nothing real fancy there. Probably should have come up with some sort of servlet to put in here. That would have been kind of finished out a full example, but it wasn't necessarily a requirement on the project these videos are related to. So if we go over here, now we got the link to all the telemetry, and we can check different metrics, such as how much of the memory has been committed to be used. Just for a quick example. And Spring Boot is giving us all that information. That's how much we're currently using, how many bytes. So all that looks like it's all running. We're ready to build and release it. In class, we will probably do it as a CI/CD pipeline. on GitHub. That doesn't take very long, but for the videos, let's just build it. But right now it's set to a jar file, and that's to test locally. To change that is just one line in the POM file over in the build. So as we start at the top, we see the parent, then the group that made it, artifact ID. This one probably says version 0.0.1 snapshot. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. I meant to change that before starting the recording. Maybe this is version 1.0.3, however many we've done. And right after that version number, we need to add a tag for packaging. Should pop up on the predictive text, and set the packaging to war. And if we don't include this line, it builds a jar file. If we include this, it builds a war file. And when we save it, notice that this is changed and it now shows the web icon instead of the coffee cup icon. The reason we did the jar file way back in version 1 is if we try to run it now, NetBeans needs to launch it on a server, but we embedded the server, so we would get problems if we tried to launch an embedded server on a linked server. So when everything's finished and ready to go, come down to where that information about the group, the artifact is, and right after the version number, change that to whatever version you're on. You probably don't want it to say snapshot. Add this packaging war. So now if we come over, right click on the project and hit clean and build, we'll probably get at least one warning, maybe two, but they're yellow, not red, so we can ignore them. It's running all the automated tests with the Maven stuff. That's kind of nice. Oh, just one warning. War plugin 3.3.2. So we didn't use the default Maven War plugin. There's some stuff in Spring Boot that we used instead of what is the preferred one. Let's see. So if I open File Explorer, hit Windows E, and go to where this is stored under Eats. Now, under this target folder, we should have the most recent build. There it is, Eats War 1.03.war. I said that very wrong. Eats-1.0.3 war file. So I'm going to open PowerShell real quick. And now to run it, we're in this folder, so we can say Java, and we still start it as if it was a jar file. The war just means that it has web stuff in it, and that's needed in order to make the JSP pages work. And now the name for it, eats-1.0.3.war, and this should run our entire build project. Which in class we will probably do that as a CI/CD pipeline and have GitHub build it and have GitHub do the build and put it on packages. But for the video, we'll just do it right here. So now if I open the browser, head over to the localhost, we can see it's still running. I guess I should have worked in something to indicate that it's running off of not running from NetBeans anymore. Let's see, Control C to cancel the server and close out of this for a second. And maybe if I just close NetBeans, yeah, that'll work. So I'll close NetBeans. That way you can tell for certain that it is not running from NetBeans any longer. Java, run a release package, and it's going to be eats-1.0.3.war. And we still get that stuff we were seeing in the console. So when we start the browser and go to localhost, so now NetBeans isn't even open, so it can't be running from NetBeans, and it's just running from that release package. So wanted to include that. Really good service, hit calculate, get all of that, hit the home page, and we still get all of our telemetry coming from Spring Boot. So that's sort of the finished version of the project now. So we didn't do that earlier. We waited to, maybe I'll put NetBeans back up, open NetBeans back up while I do this. There we go. This will be better for a recap review stuff with this in here. So we just made some small changes, just added a link to the actuator and went ahead and brought the full actuator back in. That part probably could have been skipped. And the whole time we were working on it, we were just building a jar package so that we could run it here locally with the embedded server. Because once we add this line in, which goes right under the version number by the group ID and the artifact, just put packaging war. Once we put that line in, NetBeans and Eclipse and IDEA will try to link to a server instead of running it from the embedded server. So once everything's finished, just add this in. And if you need to do some more editing, take this back out. That way you can test it locally and put this right back in before building it. Which in class, we'll probably do that. We will have GitHub build that as a CI/CD pipeline. So every time we push changes to the main branch, it just pushes the WAR file out to the packages there on GitHub. But hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you found these videos helpful, and I thought I'd go ahead and include one more showing how to release it, because we did way back in video 1, it was explicitly use a jar file, but for the final version, we need to release a WAR file because JSP doesn't run from a jar. Yeah, that's all I wanted to show in this video. Hope you found this little video series helpful. Kind of walk through the whole process from initializing the project to releasing the final package. Thanks for watching.